Well, we're into day 3 of practice, so first day of shells today, so I thought things went very, very well. 2 short stays, a lot of retention, just getting ourselves back into football shape a little bit. But today, a little bit more active. Things speed up a little bit for everybody. Young players are taking strides, but we're starting, so there's not much to say. So I'll take some new questions. All right, since I've been interviewed about every other day. Yeah, Joe.
Hey, Mark, you've talked a lot about Barnett and Tressel and the transition. What about their relationship with each other, and does the dynamic change at all in that room, or the way you guys prepare on a weekly basis?
No, really everything has stayed the same. It's been, first of all, we haven't gotten to game week yet, but there's no egos involved. That's why I made this decision probably 2 years ago. I don't think either of those guys have an ego. I think they get along very, very well with each other. It's a give and take type thing. Both of them have been in leadership positions before. Mike worked a lot with his special teams. He was in front of our football team a lot, and Harlan's been in front of our football team an awful lot too. So I think it's worked very, very well, and both are experts at what they've been coaching. So they play off each other.
Mark, in 2012, when the season ended, you said that looking back, you maybe had made a mistake not getting Andrew ready Kirk's senior year. I'm curious, will you be wanting to determine that second-string quarterback quickly so you can do things differently, or is it just that's not in the plans?
I would say that, both those guys, Tyler O'Connor and Damian Terry are both guys that they've both been on the field a lot for us already. They've both, I think, have a good grasp and knowledge of the offense. And probably when the time comes, they'll probably have to assert themselves on the field. Right now, I don't think there is a distinction, but certainly as we move forward in fall camp, you try and make those decisions. And then as far as playing them early, the opportunity presents itself. We want to play those guys early, much like we did last year, even in the Penn State game. I wasn't afraid to put Damian in on the 5-yard line, but so that was his time. But tough situation. But I think both those guys have done a nice job so far. It's just like Chicago. Nobody wants to ask questions. Yeah.
Hey, Mark, I know what are you seeing out of the wide receivers thus far? I know Connor Cook has said last year it was effective looking for Tony all the time, but he feels like this year he needs to diversify more. What are you seeing at wide receivers right now?
Third day of practice, so, you're just sort of, like I said, you're starting, but guys are catching the ball well. They look crisp. Burbage got to get back in shape. McGarrett Kings has looked good since coming off of his interval test. I think R.J. Shelton's looking very, very well. Medeiros, A.J. Troops looked very good as well. So been impressed more. I think we know what some of our guys can do. I think we look at and see how our young players looking. And, Darryl Stewart and Felton Davis both are 2 guys that, look the part, run the part, and act the part out there. So it'll be interesting to see how they retain things and how they move forward once real pads come on and we get farther into this in 2 days or in summer camp.
Mark, over here. Mm-hmm. Looking at your offensive and defensive lines, do you think this is the best trenches that you've ever had? And what is the key that you've been able to sustain and develop offensive and defensive lines?
Well, we've been pretty good on the defensive line here in the past. So I think all the ability is there, but I think you make those distinctions at the end of the year. But we certainly have a lot of good players back, and they're very active, and we got some depth there. Offensive line-wise, I think this is the most depth we've had. But again, you go back and look at our last 2 seasons. Haven't been sacked too much, ran for almost for over 2,000 yards probably as a group, and that's sort of been the norm the last couple seasons. But I think now they're getting a little bit more recognition. So, good football team in those areas. But I think we'll anoint those people at the end of the season rather than at the beginning. But, they have all the makings. They're good players with experience.
Speaking of the offensive line, with the 2 Allen brothers, do they have a trait that the 2 brothers share, or the opposite, or what?
They're sort of ornery. Yeah, they'll mix it up a little bit. But and they compete against each other, I think, throughout the process. But, other than that, very similar in terms of both for outstanding wrestlers in high school. went to the state championship, those type things. And, both are very tough, strong, physical type players. Great feet, athletes.
In your defensive backfield, you have a lot of younger competition that's vying for those spots, especially with Hicks being held out of the early parts of training camp. How do you make sure that those guys understand they look at it as the opportunity, but not press too hard to try to go over the top?
Yeah, we're going to get our young players playing in the back end there, so it's very important that we give them reps and see them play against our more experienced receivers. So we sort of roll them in there as we do everything else, as we always have. But they're going to get a lot of opportunities. All those guys, all 6 of those defensive backs look like good players. And, the corners that we brought in look like they're good players as well. So it'll be interesting to watch them as pads go on. But they have good ball skills. They can run. They have a presence to them, which I think you have to have as a young player. It'll be interesting to see, can they sustain? I think that's the key thing with freshmen. Can they sustain as they move through 20-plus practices, 28 practices or so here? Can they endure? Can they stay healthy? Those type of things.
Mark, does Darian Hicks's mono situation affect anything in terms of the corners and maybe your idea to move somebody and see if an offensive player can play defense the way Lippett did?
No, not at this time. I don't think. I think certainly R.J. Shelton can go over there. He's been there before. But right now we need to find out what our young players can do. Demetrius Cox works out there as well, so he's been very solid. And so we're sort of staying the course. But I think, like I said just a minute ago, I think we have some young players that will make the transition pretty quickly.
Mark, with the motto of reach higher, is that something that you guys only talk about during the off season and now that the practices and things have started, you focus more on the games that are ahead of you, or is that something that you constantly talk about?
I think that's something that we go into the season with and speak to fall camp about a little bit in our mindset as we move forward. And then, things change. Things are always changing, and, we come off of one thing and go into another thing. So it's sort of really what sticks. But initially moving into the season, that's the thought process, that we're here, but we need to go farther. And we're already up there, as I've said before, as I told our football team. And I think I mentioned to you guys before, too. So we're already up there. We're competing at a very high level, but we need to go a little bit higher to get where we want to be.
Mark, can you recap the summer as a whole, and what returning guys have you seen improve the most?
Recap the summer? Well, I had a great summer. Yeah. I think our players worked extremely hard in our bottom line program, which is just, hey, you're getting it done or you're not getting it done at the end of the day. Got a lot of players lifting a lot of heavy weight, a lot of players running extremely well. We look like we're in shape. We look like we have, explosive players in the back end when you look at their 40 times and their short shuttles and their long jump and their 40 times with their vertical jump. So I think that my feeling is we have good skill, and we've sort of paid the price with our big people. They can run as well. So I think we're in a good place. I think the leadership has been very good early in this camp from our senior group, and that's always extremely important. And I think there's great direction within our program at the ground level, which is, again, that's at the player level. So, when you have that at the player level, I think that gives you an added advantage, especially in games on the field, because players lead on the field. They have to. They have to get it done on the field. But it's been a great summer.
Mark, down here. You mentioned a few of the young guys on defense. I'm curious about your initial impressions of L.J. Scott the first few days.
Impressive. Very impressive. He showed up today. He's a big physical back, runs well, bounces things, sticks it up in there. Looks like the real deal.
Traditionally, most of your freshmen have had a redshirt year. It seems like recently more guys are getting on the field right away. Do you have to change your approach at all in getting those guys ready in a hurry to be on the field?
I think it's just a matter of where our need is. Can people stay healthy? And, how ready are the players? Monte Nicholson played last year. He's a great athlete, great tackler, great ball skills, so we put him in there. Some other guys played as well, but it was because of need or because of their abilities. And I think that's usually what happens. So we're going to look at every freshman as they come in, and we're going to make sure that we go ones, twos, and then Frosh. so that the Frosh are getting reps. And so it takes a little bit longer, but we're going to go ones, twos, and Frosh, and see how they make their way. And then we're going to put them against our ones at times too throughout practice. So we're going to see them measure up with not just against Frosh, but against the ones as well as the twos. So we're just going to try and build their resume and see how they handle it as we go. But I would agree that we played more freshmen last year than we have. But you go back and look at the 2011 class, and those guys are all seniors right now, and it's a great class. We only played one, DeJuan Jones, and it's an outstanding class. And those guys are all fifth-year seniors.
Coach, John here. Just to piggyback on that a little further, is there anyone specifically who has stood out so far, still early in fall camp?
I think sort of early, but you see, I'm spending a lot of time with the defensive backs, and you see Josh Butler looks good, Tyson Smith looks good, David Dow looks good. I've been impressed with both safeties. I can go through all these guys; they all look good. So our linebackers played pretty well. LJ, as you said, I've already mentioned the two wideouts. I think it takes a little bit of time for our offensive linemen and our defensive linemen, but they look talented.
Mark. Coach, you talked about Riley Bulla. I don't know if it's too early to compare him to Max, but I guess that's the obvious comparison type of player. Is it to Mike?
Yeah, two different type players. Max, even though they're brothers, Max a little bit more of a thumper probably. Riley a little bit more of a guy that can go sideline to sideline. I think they both have leadership skills. I think they both have a good feel with the defense. Certainly this is the first time that Riley will be the starter at Mike linebacker. So, Max had the advantage there of being a 3-year starter in that regard. But leadership skills, active, loves playing football, good ball skills, and he could really run. And the guy was a defensive back some in high school. And as you know, we had him in 2013. He was our starting tailback here for a couple. So obviously he's a good athlete and can run. He's physical, big.
Mark, a lot of specific questions today. I have a more general one. I just counted 67 media members here. I don't remember what 2007 was like, but can you just address the overall momentum in your program and how you used to have to sell it, and now you're just kind of watching the followers?
Yeah, I think it's sort of what I've said. We were selling hope back then a little bit, and a little bit more of an unknown, and now we're selling the results of what's happened. And I think people look at things and say, hey, they've done this, they've done that. Okay, what's the next step? Whereas reach higher comes into the play, but we're on the move a little bit, and we've got some momentum, as you said, and we've got a lot of good chemistry and a lot of confidence in our football team, which we should. So, but the bar is set very high. I understand that as well. That's probably why you're all here.
You have said since the day you arrived on campus, speed, speed, speed is the name of the game. When you look at this linebacking core, have you ever coached one faster? And just how much better does it make you when all three of them are not going to be outrun by anybody? Yeah, it's a fast group, and we've got to be able to play sideline to sideline, especially with the people, what they're doing offensively now. But again, I'm not ready to anoint our football team because we've had some great football teams here, and we've had some great defenses. And, that 2013 defense had some guys that could really run too. So we'll see how they go. But they're good football players. We have some depth, and that's what's exciting. We have some depth at those positions, so that's a positive.
Mark, you mentioned before you're doing a lot of work with the defensive backs. I'm wondering with Coach Barnett adding obviously some more duties and having so many young guys there, are you doing a little more hands-on in that group than maybe you had in the last couple of years?
No, that's just gravity. I just get pulled there. I go over the offensive line and gradually I just keep moving that direction. Okay, so that's just natural. That's what I know best, and so that's where my eyes end up going at some point. And because I think that, the corner position is a position we have to address right now because of the relative inexperience, and then also just because we've got some guys there that I think can compete. So we'll watch those guys a little bit more, and it's what I know. But nothing more than I've ever done. It's sort of the same old thing. You got a lot of players out there, and a lot of times we split up the coaching a little bit, whether it's Mike Tressel, Mark Snyder going one to the defensive line, one to the linebackers, or whether it's myself taking the safeties. But Coach Barnett's got those guys. He does an outstanding job, and I try not to interfere. But gravity takes over sometimes.
Mark, you've talked about your program maintaining its edge and the reach higher concept. And in the last year or two, have you even sniffed one sense of complacency anywhere? Because I know you rail against that, but do you ever see signs of it? Because it doesn't.
No, I don't.
us.
I really don't see signs of it. We're not built that way here. We compete against each other here, so we go a lot of ones versus ones. And when you go ones versus ones, you got to measure up on the field. Right now, right at that point in time. Otherwise, you get defeated in practice. So we've always come to work in winter workouts. We've always come to work in our bottom line program, summer camp, and I don't sense any complacency at all. So again, I think that comes from our seniors because they're now into their last turn, their last 3 or 4 months here, and they understand, I think, the urgency of this situation, what has to happen, and what they have to do to lead. And that's because that's been the nature here, I think, of what we've tried to do. We've had great senior leadership, and probably our seniors have always had their best years. When we've had big years, our seniors have had their best years, and that's a positive.
Just a quick follow-up to that. With all the success you've had lately, is it harder and harder to fuel the overlooked or disrespected or whatever, all that fuel? Is it harder and harder to keep that?
No, I think that's no. I don't really. I'm not sure I understand the question. I mean, do we have an edge to us still? Is that what we're asking? I think we still do, because again, I go back to we won 11 games. We ended up number 5 in the country. We did what we did, but the fact of the matter is we lost 2 games where we could, if we win either of those games, I think we're a little farther along. So we didn't succeed in those 2 games, so we didn't reach our goals, and that's the bottom line. Now, goals always change. I was very proud of our football team in terms of how we reacted after those 2 losses, because we regathered ourselves and we did what we needed to do to get back in the hunt. In both situations, coming after the Oregon game, we had a ways to go to get back to where we were in the top 10, and we were able to do that when we played Ohio State. After the Ohio State game, we had to regather ourselves and made a run, and we ended up in a Big Six bowl. So in both cases, we rallied the troops a little bit, but I don't sense the complacency. I think our guys have goals in mind, goals internally, what they want to do. And I think right now in summer camp, I think our guys are motivated on those. Now, we need to be able to stay motivated too. That's the key too. Can't fall away.
Mark, you mentioned it's a motivated group. It's got 17 seniors in the 2 deep. Is there a place you see where you look at it and go, this could derail a season that could be special? This is what we need to stay away from or avoid, or anything like that?
No, I'm just trying to focus on the positive and stay grounded. I think if we stay grounded, we know problems are coming. We know they're coming, and we talk about that all the time. Problems are going to come. It's how we're going to handle those problems that are going to be able to make the difference. And we've got some maturity here. We've gone through some tough times, so we got to handle the things that are going to come our way, and they will come. I promise you, they will come.
You mentioned the goals and reaching higher. What is the satisfactory? What's a successful season here now at this point?
I think a successful season is a season where you finish on the up note. That's what I still will say. A benchmark for us is going to be certainly getting in the playoffs and all those type of things. That's where our goals are. Okay, but you reevaluate your goals as you move forward too. And I think that my feeling is that this is what I want for our players. I want relationships. I want them to graduate. I want them to win. I want to go to bowl games. I want us to give back. And when they walk out of here, feel good about their experiences here. That makes it a positive season for me. The wins and the losses are going to come and go. That's a part of life. That's a part of who we are. It's going to be how we handle both ends of the stick that it's going to determine are we ultimately successful. But there's, you got to handle negativity too. That's a part of it too. But our initial goals are extremely high. I will say that. I don't go into the season saying I think we're going to lose these 2 games. So.
Coach, I think one of the things you said you wanted to work on was not giving up big plays, the 22 plays, 40 yards or more. Can you talk about press quarters against some of the elite spread teams and maybe the potential for tweaks or expansion or however you phrase that?
Well, there's great skill out there. You're playing against great skill. There's no question about that. Some of it could be prevented with a little bit better play. Some of it could have been prevented if we'd had a different defense called or structurally they attacked it. So, you try and make tweaks, but at times, there's always a weakness to every defense. There's always a weakness to every pass protection from the offensive standpoint or a route. But there's always weaknesses in the coverages. So I think the key thing is to try and be on the same page, make sure that we can play the ball in the deep part of the field. That's one of the things. Make sure that we have correct leverage on a receiver down the field and that we don't blow a coverage. Because, for example, the Oregon game, you blow 3 coverages and there's 3 touchdowns or 3 huge plays. So some of that is there. But, again, it could be structure a little bit, could be play, could be offensive players too versus ours. So it's a very competitive game out there. There's great parity in college football right now, and I think there's very innovative offenses out there.
Just follow up with that. Blown coverages. A lot of the rub, a lot of picks we're seeing out of Boston.
Yeah.
A lot of that's based on how the officials call the game, right? I mean, how do you adapt to that?
Well, they're going to rub you. They're going to pick you. That's part of it. So you've got to be able to talk it through, and you've got to be able to work on those things, which we do. And then, there are a lot of them we played correctly too. But, they got